Well, I guess, John, I'll start with, I guess the question everybody would start with, which is just tell me how you're feeling.
Feel good. Feel good, and it feels good to feel good. I've had some health problems the last 3 or 4 years, pneumonia every winter, but hopefully this winter might escape that. We're going to Jamaica for the winter, and we spent a lot of time in Jamaica last winter, but still I had pneumonia before I went down there, so I can't blame that on Jamaica. But we're going back this winter, and I'll surely be doing some writing there.
Have you recorded in Jamaica before, or has it really all been...
Yes, I recorded in Jamaica before. Part of American 4, The Man Comes Around, was recorded in Jamaica. Some of the songs were.
Tell me, this is it's the fourth album with Rick Rubin. Mm-hmm. Was there anything that was different in how you approached going into this album than the ones that preceded?
There was not much difference in the way that I approached this album as in the earlier ones with Rick Rubin. No, probably the same way. I started recording songs that I was, I couldn't get over them, so I had to get them out. So we recorded them here in Tennessee at my cabin studio with Rick's blessings. I would send him the songs to listen to, and he would critique the songs for me. And some of them he would tell me he liked. Some he didn't really care that much for. And I always knew the ones he didn't like because he was very kind about that. He would, I don't care that much about that song, as I do about some of the others, was the way he would put it to me. So I would get the songs and get them honed down the way that I wanted to record them and send them out to him again, and he'd shoot them back to me, and I'd go in the studio in Tennessee and go to work and record tracks. And a couple of times we got some finished product in Tennessee. Usually, for the most part, like the other albums, I would go to California and do the bulk of the recording with Rick in his studio.
Tell me about the process of the song selection. I'm assuming you come in with a stack, and Rick's got some ideas in mind, and it sort of goes from there. But how does that take shape into an album over time?
The stack of songs don't take shape into an album until we both listen to them and hone them and wean them down and thrown out several. Deadwood, that we call it. Sometimes we would, like in this album, we wound up with about 32 songs that I really liked and for the most part wanted to record. So it was a painful process of weeding them out and throwing out songs that I couldn't record for various reasons. And at this point, though, there was no set concept in mind for an album. The concept for these albums that I've done with Rick didn't take shape until the album was about finished. And then when we would put together our favorite, our best of songs, then we would see that we had a concept. And the concept might be that we're going in various directions with this album. We're exploring. And you might think that about American 4, that we're exploring various directions with the album, because we go so many directions with a lot of the songs that we're doing.
Did you feel it? There is certainly, though, a different feel to what these songs add up to than what the American 3 project felt like, or they each do sort of take on their own character, their own sort of theme, their own sort of heart. Was there, as you looked at the songs that were sort of making the cut and starting to see what that shape was going to be, were there ideas and themes that you were or weren't surprised to see at the heart of what was what you were really feeling was the best stuff?
Yeah, as it turned out, every album has had a kind of a theme, and the same with American 4. Mm-hmm. The Man Comes Around. It has a theme, and the theme is spirit. It is the human spirit more than the spiritual or the godly spirit. It is the human spirit that is fighting for survival in American Four, in songs like I Hung My Head, Give My Love to Rose, Streets of Laredo. The Man Comes Around itself. Man Comes Around is a song of prophecy, spiritual, based roughly on the book of Revelation, which I wrote in Jamaica. It does have a theme. As I say, it's the strength of the human spirit in American Four.
Well, it feels more elegiac. I mean, the American Three record with, I Won't Back Down and Solitary Man, and there was that sort of defiance and survival feeling to that record, and this feels more like sort of passing into the next stage of thinking those things.
I think it probably reflects a little of the maturity that I've experienced myself with the pain that I've suffered with the illnesses that brought me so close to death. God was there for me to reach out to, and He saved me from dying. But it was the spirit within me that He instilled with power and strength to keep on living. And it strengthened the bones and the muscle and the fiber. That kind of spiritual power does. And it makes you believe. It made me believe in myself. It made me believe that I was going to live, that I was going to survive, that I was going to be strong, that I was going to do what I needed to do.
I didn't want to come to some of the health questions. I want to go through the music stuff first. But having said that, I guess the last I spoke to you was really right when it was they were sort of figuring out the misdiagnosis and figuring out that maybe what they thought was going on wasn't really what was happening with you. Can you tell me about that? Going through staring down that diagnosis and then having to shift their whole thinking about it.
From 1997, the first time I was in critical shape in the hospital, they misdiagnosed what was wrong with me 2-3 times. First, it was Shy-Drager syndrome, which they a year later, the doctor said they'd misdiagnosed that was not it. Now, before that, it was Parkinson's, but they misdiagnosed that. It wasn't. And then Shy-Drager syndrome, and now it's autonomic neuropathy. And I'm not sure what that name means, except I think it means that you're getting old and shaky. The immune system it doesn't shut down, but it gets weaker. It is not as strong as it was before. I don't have the strength of immunity against diseases, against pneumonia, that I had before 97. I'm very much aware of that, and I'm very careful not to go into crowds or go around places where people might have cold. Or I try to stay away from hospitals and doctors' offices because that's where you pick up majority of diseases, clinics and hospitals. But I found myself overcoming all these things by sheer will. The underlying factor is that that diagnosis still exists, the autonomic neuropathy, which I understand means just a kind of the smaller nerves in your extremities kind of go away, and stop working. And I found that to be true. My feet tingle, but so what? A lot of people's feet tingle. It doesn't bother me. It just doesn't bother me. I don't let it bother me. I won't let it bother me. And even if I have to be on crutches, if I had to be on crutches or use a walking cane or walker or whatever, I honestly don't think I would let that bother me, that disease was what caused it, because I won't give in to that disease. I've been misdiagnosed 3 times with diseases, and a disease is a disease is a disease, and I don't have that, and I don't have that, and I don't have that.
And it didn't interfere. It seems like you were really able still to work on this album and concentrated enough bursts and able to really do some, stack some regular work time up to get through them.
I worked on this album in spite of that diagnosis, in spite of everything. I found strength to work on this album. I found strength to work on this album just despite the disease, just despite the very idea that it could keep me from doing what I want to do, because I would not allow it. I wouldn't let it. I came to work. I came to the studio at times when I couldn't sing. I had no voice, but I didn't stop that. I didn't stop it from trying. As it turned out, there were times when I came to the studio that I didn't have a voice, that I couldn't sing, that I could have stayed at home and pouted in my room and turned the lights down low and got real mournful and sad and cried in my beer or whatever, or my milk or whatever I was drinking. But I didn't let that happen. I came to the studio and opened up my mouth and tried to let something come out a few times. And as it turned out, it did. There are times that there are tracks on this album that I recorded when it's the last thing in the world I thought I'd be able to do.
And probably in the end, probably some of the stronger ones, because you had to dig even deeper to find those. So were there...
Those are the ones that have the feeling, the passion, the fire, the fervor, the ones that came out of pain and weakness, because there's strength coming out of weakness there. If you can understand that, there was a great deal of strength coming out of that weakness that disease could have robbed me of that strength, but it didn't, because I knew that strength was still there in there somewhere, so I brought it out.
Coming to these sessions with that spirit and that feeling, were there songs that you really approached as sort of anchors for this record? I mean, were there songs that coming in you said, this I know really needs to be there?
There were songs that I felt like that if I couldn't sing this one this day, then I could sing that one. So I brought my pocket full of songs to every session. I had not only the two or three which I might record during that the time of that session, but about 5 or 6 more that I could fall back on, that I could look at the titles and know that, hey, I might feel like doing that one right there, right now. And I would stop whatever I was doing. If we were in the middle of taping something else that wasn't quite working, would stop it and say, okay, new song, boys. Here's a new song. We're going to this one. This is it right here. I would play it on the guitar for them, sing it to them, or I'd play it on a CD for them, whatever I had handy for them to hear what I wanted to do. That always worked. To alternate, to go to something that I could do. And I don't think it's going to something less worthy of being done. It was just something that was waiting there for me to do in case I needed to do that particular thing. And that's what I did.
Any of those where you even surprised yourself pulling something out that you weren't expecting to see go that far?
Yeah, the Sting song, for instance, I Hung My Head, one of my strongest vocals. And I came to that session with practically no voice at all. And I said, I will do this song. This was one of those that I pulled up after I tried something that didn't work. I said, I will do this song. I know I can do this song. And as it turned out, it relaxed me, it opened me up, and it may be one of my best vocals on the CD.
Is that one that you had found and come with, or is that one that Rick had brought to you? Or
no, my son John Carter Cash brought that to me, played it for me, and I loved it immediately. Knew that I had to record it, and Rick loved it too when he heard it. Why did you respond immediately to that one for the? I don't know. It talks about a brother and dying, and a rifle and shooting, and I'm kind of into that. I was before. Got a little shaky. I decided that I better not shoot at a tree. I might hit a cow. I don't know why I could relate to it. It's that kind of song that I like. It's that mournful, tragic song. The songs of my people, of country music, if you will, if I could just borrow that for a minute, are songs. A lot of them are songs of tragedy, songs of disaster and tragedy, murder, death, dying, and broken love affairs. And this song of Sting's just fit right in there, and I just felt like it was written for me.
I'm really struck by a couple of the songs that seem really brave choices in terms of really being singers' songs, being difficult vocal songs and really sort of exposed. Something like First Time Ever I Saw Your Face, or even Bridge Over Troubled Waters, songs that are so associated with really, pure vocalists.
Well, if I had tried to sing First Time Ever I Saw Your Face like Roberta Flack does, I would have had to head for the back door, because I can't touch that vocal. And so the way I approach a song like that, I love the song up front first, and Bridge Over Troubled Waters. I love the song. But I knew that that those songs, and those are two good examples that you brought up, I knew that that I could not sing either one of those songs the way they were recorded, and I didn't want to record either one of them the way they were recorded by the originals. I didn't want to sing them that way. I wanted to sing them my way. I had to make them my songs. I wanted to I wanted to feel like that I had made that song mine when I put it down in the studio. And it began to feel that way as I worked on these songs. And if it doesn't begin to feel that way with me, after I work on it a while, I'll throw it out. But I didn't throw those out because they worked. And I began to feel like that these are my songs. And it doesn't matter what anybody else has done with them. This is the way I do it.
Was it hard to, with songs like that, again, where as you said, where the vocals are so identified with them, is it hard to try to find that, to try to work your way through it and get away from the versions we've listened to and known, and try to get inside them in a different way?
No, from the very first rehearsal, I didn't have any trouble getting away from the original vocal, like the Beatles song, for instance, In My Life. I mean, you can imagine how silly I would have felt trying to sound like the Beatles, or Paul McCartney, or John Lennon either. But I didn't try to. I heard that song for what it was to me, for what it meant to me. And I identified with it there. I saw all those people, all those old friends, all those old lovers, all those old sweethearts, all those old times, good times, hard times. And I identified with that immediately before I sang that song the first time. So the first time I sang that song, it was my song.
It's amazing that that's a song that Lennon wrote when he was 24 years old, and that all those feelings, that it gets those feelings right and translates. Is that the first Beatles song you've recorded? I'm trying to remember if there's any.
Yes, it is. It's the first one I ever recorded. I used to sing Norwegian Wood, but I never recorded it. And that's the first one I ever recorded.
Tell me about the session recording Danny Boy in the church. I actually went back and I was rereading your autobiography, and in there you mentioned that Rick had found a cathedral that he was interested in working in. That's 6 or 7 years ago, or whenever that was written. Is it the same space, and how did you finally get to see that idea through?
Well, we planned it every time we talked about recording our sessions to come in California. We talked about we got to put one day aside for the cathedral and record You'll Never Walk Alone and Danny Boy. And I never even considered any other songs except those two. Those two songs we planned to do from the very beginning in the church. And it was the Episcopal Church in Los Angeles that we finally settled on, that had the most beautiful organ, the most beautiful stained glass windows, the most beautiful furniture. And there's some pictures in the CD, inside the CD, one or two, at least one, of inside the church that show how beautiful it is. But all we wanted was the organ, this beautiful organ, and the song. And I sang Danny Boy, and Ben Martinch played the organ, and sang You'll Never Walk Alone. And they came out exactly the way we had hoped they did, and The session lasted about 2 hours, and it was over.
Just in and out and got it.
In and out, got it. Yeah, yeah. Just exactly the way we had hoped and planned and prayed it would be.
Had you had talked about using that space on the earlier records?
Yes.
It just hadn't worked out, or just hadn't.
It hadn't worked out on the earlier records. It just we just hadn't followed through. But we came back to the idea and liked the idea even more this time, and we're more determined than ever to do it. And I'm so glad we did, because it adds an element that I've never had on record before. Never have I had anything like Danny Boy with the church organ.
It's an incredible sound, and coming in the middle of the album, it just jumps out as this whole. You feel that you're in this other place all of a sudden. So, tell me about writing the title song. I know there's a story, or a number of stories that go with how the man comes around.
The man comes around. The idea originally came from a dream. Started as a dream I had. About 7 years ago, I dreamed that I was in Nottingham, England, and I'd gotten a book called Dreaming of the Queen. And I lost the book the next day. I don't know what happened to it. But this book kind of points out that the majority of adult Brits, at one time or another, dream of the Queen. And I thought that was strange, because I dream of celebrities myself. I dream of the presidents I've known. I dream of them, and that I'm having conversations with them. And I dream of that I'm with Billy Graham, because we spent so much time together. And I'm having conversations with him that I never had before. One night in Nottingham, England, I dreamed that I was in Buckingham Palace, and sitting on the floor was Queen Elizabeth and a friend of hers with a knitting basket between them, sitting there knitting. And they were laughing and talking, and I walked up, and they looked up at me, and Queen Elizabeth looked at me and said, "Johnny Cash, you're just like a thorn tree in a hurricane, or in a whirlwind. You're just like a thorn tree in a whirlwind." And I started to say something, but I woke up, and that was the end of the dream. So I couldn't figure out what this dream had to have meaning, but I couldn't figure out what it meant. You're like a thorn tree in a whirlwind. I couldn't find no connection, anything in my life that worked, that made sense. But then finally, after a couple of years, I thought, I read something in the book of Job, and I saw the word whirlwind. And then I looked up in the chain reference system, in the concordance, in the commentary, and whirlwind is synonymous with God. And the thorn tree is synonymous with man and his obstinacy and his arrogance. And then I started putting it all together. Standing like a thorn tree in a whirlwind, arrogant, shaking my fist at God. Is that what Queen Elizabeth was trying to tell me that I was doing? So I thought, that's got to be it. That's got to be it. But I couldn't get that off my name. I couldn't call the Queen and ask her if I was right, because she didn't have a dream like Addie. Wish I could have. But anyway, I couldn't get it off my mind, and I started writing. And I started writing things about whirlwinds and thorn trees and the putting of the two of them together, and the two of them fighting against each other, and threw those lyrics away. Then wrote more and more and more. And then I came to the ultimate test of man and his obstinacy. And that would be the judgment day. And the question of redemption. And I went to the book of Revelation in the Bible, and I started studying Revelation. And the more I studied, the more confused I got, and the more I realized that I didn't know. The more I knew I didn't know anything. It's about the way it is with me in the Bible. But I did find out a lot of things that I wanted to know about the second coming, as it is prophesied in the book of Revelation, and of Jesus Christ return to earth and the judgment day. And I closed the Bible one morning and I said, well, the man comes around. I said it aloud to nobody in the room. It was about 5:30 in the morning. I'll never forget it. I wrote down, the man comes around, and got up and went and got some coffee and forgot it for the day. Next morning, I came back to that, and there was that those 4 words. And so I started writing. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And of the reams of writing and lyrics that I wrote, dozens of verses, I finally saw a song forming. I didn't think it was going to be a song for a long time. I thought it was just going to be one of my weird poems, but I saw a song forming. And so I started putting it together as a song. And at a certain point, I picked up the guitar and started trying to sing it to see how it felt. It felt good, so I kept working on it until I felt like I had my song.
And what's the text that leads in and out of the song? And what was that decision?
The text that leads in and out of the song is the vision of the horseman, of the white horse and of the pale horse. The pale horse is death, and hell follows after. That's the judgment. I'm not exactly sure where in Revelation it is. I'll have to look it up myself.
How much writing do you find yourself doing? Things that might turn into songs and things that don't.
Yeah, I write quite a bit that don't turn into songs or that are never used. A lot of things that I just stick in the back drawer, call them poems or poetry or call them nothing. But since with making one album after another, I'm more mindful of the fact that I'm into songs. I'm on to songs. I'm looking for songs, and I'm writing songs. And so I work hard at it. I work hard at writing, and I have no set time of day or night to write. Sometimes I write first thing when I get up in the morning. I'll start writing, or first thing in the morning I'll start listening to music. And I get up early, 5 o'clock at least, no later. Sometimes 4:30, and I put on a CD and I start listening to music. And after a while, I go down and make the coffee and come back and listen to some more music, or maybe write, But maybe later on in the day, I might pick up a pen and start writing something that's been buzzing in my head. Sometimes it'll be in the evening. Sometimes it'll be at night when I'm asleep, and I'll get up and to go to the bathroom, and I'll see my pen and paper sitting there, and I'll sit down to see where I was when I wrote the last thing, and all of a sudden I'll see where 2 lines will work that I didn't realize would before, so I write them down. So I have no set time to write. It's just whenever I just make myself available, and I keep my pen and paper handy.
And the writing that turns into songs, does that mostly just grow out of other things that you're writing and you can see something develop, or do you sit down with an idea of there's something that you hear as a song and you have to try to get that out as its own thing?
My songwriting follows no set pattern. No set pattern. There's no two alike. I've never had a writing project that came close to the extension that Man Comes Around did. I never had one that I put in as much time, much writing, as many hours in it as I did that song. Because I knew I was overwriting when I was writing all that stuff. I knew it wasn't going to all be used, but I had to do it. I had to get it out. The more I would skip through the book of Revelation, the more lyrics I would write, the more and more and more that were never used. And then sometimes seemingly nothing inspires a song idea. Nothing. It's just a title hits me, and I'll sit down and I'll start writing lyrics, and sometimes something good comes from it. Sometimes usually it doesn't.
I'll kind of go with this question to set up the next one, and maybe this is a sort of big, but it's your 70th birthday year. On top of it's the 50th anniversary year for Son and Sam, and of course last week was 25 years since Elvis passing. What do you spend a lot of time thinking about all that time and thinking about those days, and has all this called up things you haven't thought about for a while?
Well, a lot of anniversaries and milestones coming along here, celebrations, 25 years, 50 years, 75 years. It's also the 75th year that the Carter family have been recording. And June's beginning a new album herself, so that tradition continues. We're not into stopping and polishing milestones. We're just really not into that at all. And as far as Elvis has been dead 25 years, kind of a hoopla. No, we don't celebrate that. We don't celebrate the anniversary of his death. So I like to celebrate his music. There's a song, Danny Boy, in this album that I got to give Elvis credit for some of the spirit and the feeling I had when I recorded it, because I listened to his recording of Danny Boy over and over again before I recorded it, because it's the best. Elvis has the best recording of Danny Boy I'd ever heard. But no, back to the celebrations. When I turned 70 on my 70th birthday, I got these calls from all over the world. I even got a call from President Clinton in Australia. He was in Australia, calling to wish me happy birthday. I got them from everybody, and I really had a nice time. I had a nice day with all my old friends and people I loved and admired and respected, like Chris Christopherson called me and congratulated me, Willie, just a little bit of everybody. But and I thought, laughingly, the whole world seems to be having a birthday party in my name tonight, and I'm going to bed early. I was in Jamaica enjoying myself very much, had a nice big birthday dinner, and did go to bed early. I don't, like I say, we don't polish milestones. We look forward to the next one. We look forward to the year 50, the 51st year, or the 26th year, or the 71st year. We look forward to work to be done in that year, which is what I'm really trying to do. This is my 71st year of life that God has seen fit to let me live, and I'm working hard in my 71st year.
Talking about going back to to reapproaching some of the older songs on this record. Go through them, but Lonesome I Could Cry and Streets of Laredo and Give My Love to Rose. We go through each of them separately, but how do you know which are the songs from years gone by that are the ones that you would keep around and go back to and try to work on for a project like this?
Streets of Laredo is a song that I recorded first time in the 60s, but I wasn't happy with my recording of the song. Not at all. I hadn't been ever since I recorded it. And so I came up with some new verses that made the song make more sense to me and made it stronger, made it a better song. And also, while I was taking the winter off last winter way down south, I worked on Streets of Laredo and made it the song that I wanted to record. Give My Love to Rose was one that came up in the session on the spur of the moment. It's one of those things that all of a sudden it just felt like it needed to be recorded, and I did, and I recorded it. And I felt good about the performance on it this time, better than the original recording even, and so it's in the album, Give My Love to Rose. And I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry with Nick Cave. That worked so good. I felt so good about that. I think Nick and I we kind of sang together really good on that song. We came together on the last verse and sang together even, in addition to the swapping the verses. But I really like singing with him. He's a good man.
Had you kept a relationship with him since recording?
No, I haven't talked to Nick since the session, no.
But in between, from before the session, from having recorded
no
his thing, just...
No, I hadn't. I didn't have any way to contact him. No. Hadn't talked to him. But I like him very much.
With a song like I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, do you think about, what's the first time you heard that song, or the first time that you would have encountered Hank Williams and his songs, and how do you call on that history when you sit down to sing?
First time I encountered a Hank Williams song, it woke me up and slapped me in the face and shook me awake, was Lovesick Blues. And I used to sing that when I was a kid, when I could yodel. Then I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry came along a little later, in the later 40s, and I always wanted to record it. I always loved that song.
You did a full album of Hank songs in the 60s, right?
I did an EP. They called it an EP, an extended play single of Hank Williams songs. And it was in the late 50s, actually.
I guess the other side of that is the newer songs and maybe some of the more surprising choices on this record, as on the other records with Rick. On this one, certainly Hurt, the Nine Inch Nails song, and Personal Jesus. Were those songs that you immediately took to when you first heard them, or how do you navigate taking on material like that?
Rick sent me those songs in Jamaica, and I took to both of those songs, Hurt and Personal Jesus, from the time I heard them the first time. I knew that I had to record them. I think Hurt is the best anti-drug song I ever heard. I think if it doesn't scare you away from taking drugs, nothing will. Also, it's a song about a man's pain and about what we are capable of doing to ourselves, and the possibility that we don't have to do that to ourselves anymore. Personal Jesus, I was surprised that the song came out of the part of the music world it came from. It's probably the most evangelical gospel song I ever recorded, and I'm sure it wasn't meant to be that. Maybe it was. Maybe the writer meant for it to be, but it's certainly a good song, and it certainly speaks true with me and my faith.
Do you feel like, has it gotten easier at all to sort of hear those songs and sort of hear through the arrangements as recorded and get a sense of what you would do with them, or what it is, be able to pull out what it is that you're responding to and know how to make that, like you said before, make that your own? I
had no trouble making these songs my own. I felt I could relate to these songs from the very beginning. To Hurt, I never did the needle. I never did that part of it, but I did everything else. And Personal Jesus, I could relate to that. Being a Christian, I just have a love for these songs that from the time I heard them, I just loved them and had to record them.
Tell me about We'll Meet Again. Who's on there? Getting Jack Clement on there, and who all was around for that session?
We'll Meet Again is one of my first sessions that we had for this album. Jack Clement's on there, and June's on there. Rosie Carter, June's daughter, our daughter. All the guys in the studio that were hanging out, singing, and the ones that were playing on there, John Carter and Laura. Just a lot of musicians and a lot of people that, Chuck Cochran. I can't remember who all was on there now, but a bunch of people are on there.
And that was one done early on, and
That was done early on here at the Cabin Studio in Tennessee.
what? Let's talk about some of the guests on the record. You said how you enjoyed working with Nick Cave on Lonesome. What about Don Henley doing actually his song, doing Desperado for the record?
You know, these were surprises to me that Don Henley was going to be. I didn't know he was going to be on the record until he was there that day. Rick didn't tell me until he introduced me to Don Henley, and Don had heard that I had recorded Desperado or was recording Desperado, and came by to sing on it with me. Rick had asked him if he'd sing on it, and so he did. That's the first time we met, and haven't talked to him since, but I like that. Hey, Don, thanks. You did a good job.
What do you think that somebody like that adds to these records? Obviously, all the records you've done with Rick, they're very simple and sparse and straight ahead, and so what do you think bringing another vocalist in or another, filling out an arrangement that way? What for you? How does that help?
Don Henley to sing on Desperado really works for me, no matter what else is on the record. No matter how simplified or oversimplified or undersimplified the recording might be, if Don Henley is on Desperado, then he certainly belongs. It sounds good, and I mean, it works good and it sounds good.
And then Fiona Apple on Bridge Over Troubled Waters. Was that also a surprise, or also somebody Rick brought in?
That was a surprise too. No, I knew she was coming in that day. Rick told me that morning that Fiona Apple was going to be in the session in the studio and going to sing on one of the songs, and I was excited about that because I really like her, and she did a good job on the record. She helped cover up some of my rough spots.
And also curious, because I don't know how the session was done, John Frusciante from the Red Hot Chili Peppers plays on Personal Jesus. That's somebody who's certainly been through some things in his life, been through some dark times and some pain himself, especially on a song like that. Did that feel like a natural, somebody who belonged there for that?
Yeah, I was glad John was there on that. It felt good to have him. It's a kind of a comforting thing to have John there on that song. I have someone there in a situation like that is a real comfort, and my thanks to John for doing a good job on the song.
And those are all actually, as I look at that list, those guests are people who've been through some things. Even Fiona, young as she is, has some living in her and has some hurt in her. I don't know whether that was deliberate on Rick's part or whether that's just who would make the right fit on those songs. But there's more in common there than not in common with those.
Well, it's kind of in keeping with the whole album. We're talking about the pain and the hurt, and then the human spirit that overcomes. The power that's instilled by God into the human being to overcome all these things. And all these people have done that. John and Fiona and all of them, all of us have gone through the hard times and can know what we speak of when we speak of these things.
Curious about the a few years ago when the tribute show, the TV show on TNT was done. Were there any songs that came back into focus for you, or that you would have reconsidered or just thought about in a different way from going through watching that sort of all-star bunch of people put a show like that together? And was there anything that it reminded you of, or anything that sort of again, came back from something like that? No,
that was a unique experience. That show, and all of those people together doing that show for me in New York, that was a unique experience. I haven't experienced anything like that before or since, and there was nothing missing there. It was all there. Everything was there, I think, that needed to be there. I owe a great deal of gratitude to all of the people who participated in that show for making it such a good show for me.
What were, in the end, what were the most difficult songs to let go when you were making the cut for this record? What were the last ones that hung on until you actually had to make the final decision?
Gosh, when I let them go, I let them go. It's hard to say which ones I hated to let go that I did let go. But a Joe song called "I Came on Business for the King," we dropped. That we wanted in the album. "You'll Never Walk Alone," I mentioned that before. We dropped because we only wanted one song from the church, and that's "Danny Boy."
With going straight into working on the next, do you keep songs that you tried for this album or things that got recorded and didn't make the cut? Do those, do you keep working on those moving forward, or do you feel like those were part of that project and now we start with a clean slate?
No, we leave those songs lay. We leave them laying where they are. Those songs, American's coming out with a box set. We're doing it in November, I think. And some of the songs that are the outtakes, the ones that weren't used in all four of my American albums, are going to be bonus tracks in the box set. So some of those songs will be used, and there are none of them that we've talked about or thought about even working up and using on a future album or spending any time on, because we spent obviously a lot of time on them, or they wouldn't have made the finals or the semifinals before we had to drop them.
We started to talk about, and I have to ask, the phenomenon around the "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" soundtrack, and the fact that 6 million people have gone out and bought this record of American roots music. What can that possibly mean or possibly indicate about where people are thinking and listening to music right now?
I think the 6 million sales of "Oh Brother" and of pointing up to the fact that grassroots music is a big deal shows what the record buying public really is after. They want the real thing. They're after the real thing, but with a lot of excitement, I guess, like the banjos and the fiddles and the mandolins and the guitars. I think it points up that the fact that we're still looking for substance in our music, and a lot of substance in those songs, in those records.
How do you listen, or how do you find music at this point? Obviously, since you're continuing through sessions, maybe it's a little different right now than usual, but is it more about songs that Rick or John Carter or records that people around you will bring to you? I know you said you're going back to a lot of older black gospel right now. What's just how do the listening patterns develop?
I don't have any pattern of listening to music. I listen to everything people have brought me, not just Rick and John Carter or Ferg, the engineer. Sometime will bring in a CD with a song on it for me, and I listen to them all, and I try to respond to everybody. And when I'm doing an album, believe me, there's a ton of songs that are submitted, and I listen to a ton of them. But it's not hard to do that, really. I get my coffee early in the morning, and usually every morning I'll listen to some music, and usually every morning I'm listening to some songs that have been submitted to me the day before. I try to listen to them while they're hot, as I call it, so I don't forget to listen to them.
Just because there are these tribute albums, a couple of those coming out, there's all these different reissue series from different labels happening. There's the song you wrote for the new Will the Circle Be Unbroken project. How involved, or how, in all of these, it seems like things are going on from all directions right now. Is that I mean, I'm sure it's exciting to see it all happening, but how involved in each of those things do you find yourself?
Well, I'm involved in each of those as my personal involvement is required. If I agree to do something, then I'm involved in it. The song that I wrote for the Circle Be Unbroken 3 album is a song that I wrote back in 1979. And when Randy Scruggs asked me if to be on the album, I immediately thought of that song, and I said, yeah, I've written a song that would work good in that project. So I recorded it with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, and then June came in with me, and we did another one together. We did The Walk of Life, a Mark Knopfler song, and we're totally involved while we're working on it, yeah.
Well, and with First Time Ever I Saw Your Face, I think people forget, too, that it really was written more by a folk singer. I mean, that Ewan MacColl writing it precedes the version that Roberta Flack gave it, and that you can take it back to that simpler, that more direct way that it was initially conceived. Well, these records now with 4 records and with this many years, I mean, this whole period with Rick Rubin really now is a whole stage of your career, and a stage that put you in front of a new audience and a different audience. Can we talk about how you guys first connected and first got together, and over the last however many years it is now, what you think that's introduced to your career?
It was 91 or 92. I was playing a show in California at one of the suburbs of L.A., and Lou Robin came to my dressing room and said, Rick Rubin would like to meet me. I asked who Rick Rubin is, and he told me who Rick was. And I said, sure, I'll be glad to meet him. He said, he wants to sign you to his record label. And I laughed, and I said, why? Why would anybody want to do that? I was had been recording for Mercury Polygram in Nashville. Spinning My Wheels had been dropped from, anyway, were dropped. But Rick was there, and I went back, or he came back to my dressing room, and he said, I'd like to sign you up, man, and record you. And I said, what would you do with me if you had me? And he said, well, we had a laugh or two over that. Then he said, what I would really do is to like to sit down with you, with your guitar in front of a microphone, and you sing me everything you ever wanted to record. And from that, we would make a record.
Kind of hard to resist as an approach.
I said, you're talking about a concept that I had years ago called Johnny Cash, Late and Alone, where I wanted to just take my guitar and sing the songs I love. And he said, that's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear you sing. And so I said, what makes you think you'd sell records if I did that? I said, it's not exactly an original idea. I could have done that many, many times. He said, yeah, but you didn't. And I said, you're right, I didn't. And he said, well, let's do it. So the more we talked, and the more I heard from him later, and the more we finally got together on the telephone and talked about the possibilities, the more I realized that something could happen, something good could happen, that we could probably make a record together. So I signed with Rick Rubin. And my audition chamber was in his house, in his living room, with his dogs at my feet, and making all the noises they wanted to make. Sometimes we'd stop and I'd start over because they'd come roaring through the house, barking. But we made our first record that way. And the second, and into the third, before we moved into, started making, doing parts of them in the cabin here in Tennessee or in the house he moved into in Los Angeles. But over the past 10 years that I've worked with Rick, it's been a really joyful period of growth so far as artistically with me. From that first record, where it was just me and my guitar and my thumb only on the guitar, playing the guitar, and the songs that I really had to put my heart and soul in and watch every breath because I was all that the microphone had. it really worked, and it really felt good. Now that we've come thus far, we have no aversion to go back and recording that way anymore if we need to. If we have a song that we have the need to record that same way for, then we can do that without worrying about it, as we do from time to time.
Were you aware of a dramatic change in your audience and in who was paying attention after the when you started working with Rick, or at that point was it more the kind of rock and roll outlaw audience anyway, and it was just a question of sort of going with that?
Well, the rock and roll outlaw audience had already started coming. They had never really gone away over the years from me. I'd always had some of that crowd, but not anything like I did when I started recording with Rick Rubin. Word got out that I was happening, whatever that meant. But I really felt like I was happening, and he took me down to the Viper Room in Beverly Hills, and I did a show there at the Viper Room, and that night I really felt like that things were beginning to happen for me. It felt really good to know that there's a possibility that I had an audience among the young people out there that were buying records, and that I might be able to record something that they would want to buy. And so I worked hard at it, and over the 10 years that I've been with Rick, we've all worked hard at it to come with the things that they want to buy, that they want to hear. And we're very protective of it. We watch our flanks. We record our stuff and have whoever we want to or don't want to on the record or not on there. We take no prisoners. We do it the way we want to.
I guess let's just talk about a couple of moments or periods in history, even if only to compare, since it is the 50th anniversary of Sun Records. What do you think of when you think back on the earliest days there, and Sam Phillips and Roy and Jerry Lee and Elvis and everything that you were all going through together back then?
Well, those were great years that I was working with Carl and Jerry and Roy and Elvis out of Sun. We worked package shows, all the little towns in Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee. We worked shows in ball fields and gymnasiums and high school auditoriums, and it felt good. And we felt like then that something was happening. And what I felt like was happening then is the way I feel now about my time, my career at American Recordings. That when I started with American Recordings, it was like almost like it was at Sun. When I started with Sun, something's happening out there, and I wasn't sure about what it was, but it sure feels good, whatever it is.
What comparison between Rick and Sam Phillips do you see? Is there something that binds those two together?
Well, the thing that binds the two of them together, Rick Rubin and Sam Phillips, is both men had vision. They both have vision. They don't. They tell you how things are going to be because they see those things. They see the future. They see the possibilities, and they see you having attained that and having achieved that thing that they see.
Also wanted to ask about, I think, some records that will stand forever and will really define a moment, and have also gotten reissued and buffed up the last couple of years are the Prison records. How do you think back on some of those shows and those albums and what that period meant to you and to listeners?
I played my first Prison concert at Huntsville, Texas State Prison in 1956, and it came a blinding rainstorm that day, and we were set up on a little wooden platform right in the middle of a field where they had the rodeo, and there was Marshall Grant, Luther Perkins, and myself, the Tennessee Two, and I set up, and the storm hit, and the thunder rolled, and the lightning flashed, and and the power went off. But I kept on singing and kept on trying, and thank God the lightning didn't strike us. But the power went off, and I kept on singing, and that day, I guess the convicts, I became one of them. To them, I became one of them because I wouldn't leave them. I wouldn't stop singing because the power went off. I kept trying to reach them, even though I had no amplification. It wasn't days until I heard from San Quentin, California. They had a show there every New Year's Day, and they wanted me on that show. So I agreed to go, and I went January 1st, 1957, 58, 59, and another time or two in the early 60s. Did shows on their New Year's Day show that they have every year at San Quentin, or had then every year at San Quentin. So I realized that it was such an exciting thing that it just had to be put on record, that if I could get that feeling, those emotions that I'd felt at Huntsville, Texas, and at San Quentin on record, that we'd have a really exciting record. And as it turned out, it was true.
How long did that take from the idea of recording till then being able to go in and do it? Was there resistance? Was there, opposition? I would think, especially then, it's a certain sort of controversial choice to make.
It was a controversial choice to make, and it took a little persuasion, but with some help from Lou Robin, the promoter who took me in there, and a preacher who preached there every fourth Sunday at San Quentin, a preacher friend of mine from Ventura, set up the concert at Folsom Prison. It was the first time, and went in and recorded the show. And it was 10 years. It took 10 years for it to come about.
Do you feel like there's anything that you learned from those shows and from the time in the prison with the prisoners year after year like that? Are there lessons that you take away from making that commitment and that time to those people that you still carry with you?
I still make that commitment to every crowd, to every audience, that I won't leave you if you won't leave me. I don't audibly make that commitment, but that is my commitment. I don't leave my audience, no matter what the problems are. I was talking to Rick the other day, listening to this record and looking over the titles. He said, "This is the best record we've done so far." And I said, "You mean of all four that we've done, you think this is the best one?" And he said, "Yes, I do." And I thought about it a minute, and I said, I hope it is, because we put more blood, sweat, and tears and love into this one than anything we've ever done. And he said, "It's going to pay off, believe me, because it is the best one." And I firmly believe that, too, that The Man Comes Around is the best record I've done for American.
What do you feel like it does that the others didn't do?
Well, what I feel like it does that the others didn't do is it reaches out even a little farther in more directions than the other ones ever did. What with the recording in the cathedral, which adds an element of surprise probably to a lot of people, for a lot of people, but not just that, but then the simplicity of the thing with Nick Cave and I singing "I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry" with just a couple of guitars, and then some of the other pop songs. First time ever I saw your face, that no one would ever in 100 years think of me singing, me including, until I had it presented to me that this is a song I should record, and then I heard me singing it. Could hear my way of doing it. But and these are the pleasant, sweet surprises that come along when I'm making a record, to discover a song like that I've always loved, and then realize that I could make it my own, that Bridge Over Troubled Water could be my song, that I could make it my own song if I worked at it. And as it turned out, I didn't have to work at it very much. Rick did that part of it, the arrangements and getting the music together and all. But it goes in so many different directions, but they all come together, and where they come together is a oneness with me. They come together being my songs.